everyone. So today I actually have a bit of a different video for you. If you didn't know, March is Women's History Month. And today I want to pay my respect to all of the amazing female rock musicians by making a video all about the most influential women in rock music. So even though most rock musicians were male, there were actually quite a few female rock musicians who really made history with amazing music. So today we're going to take a look at female rock musicians in the 50s, 60s and 70s. There obviously have been amazing female rock musicians in the 80s and 90s and 2000s as well, but I figured we're just going to focus a bit more on the 60s and 70s. First, because that is a time period I just know a lot about, and second, because that was when rock music became very popular and we're kind of talking about the women who were the first girls being on stage with guitars and just making really raw and wild rock music. I'd also like to preface this by saying I'm obviously not going to talk about every female rock musician there was. I just kind of picked the most famous ones or the ones that I thought made like the biggest impact. But I would love you to share all the amazing female rock musicians you know and that I maybe didn't talk about in the comments so we can all talk about these amazing women. So I put on a candle, I'm burning some incense, I got myself a coffee. Get yourself a coffee, get yourself a snack, sit back, relax and enjoy a bit of women's history in rock music. So I wanted to get my facts as straight as possible, so I did a little bit of reading on all of these amazing women last night and I wrote down some things, so yeah, that's why I have this book with me right now. Starting with Sister Rosetta Tharp, also known as the godmother of rock and roll music. So Rosetta started out as a gospel singer in the 40s and soon became very controversial due to her sexual and raw music and lyrics. Her sound was very unique because she kind of mixed the gospel music with rhythm and blues, and she was also the first woman to start playing guitar solos, and she just really spiced up gospel music. Her voice was also very unique and absolutely beautiful, and people just loved her for her energy and everything that she represented. She was also most likely bisexual and was probably in a relationship with another gospel singer called Mary Knight, and the two even recorded a few records together. Her most successful hit was a song called Strange Things Happen Every Day, which she released in 1945. And it is an amazing song. If you have never heard it before, I highly recommend you to listen to it. You know what? I'm gonna make a Spotify playlist with songs of all the amazing women that I'm gonna talk about now. And I'm gonna link that in the description box. And if you wanna listen to it, just check it out. Maybe there are some women in there you have never heard of before. And if you wanna check out their music, I'm gonna link the Spotify playlist in the description box. The next woman I want to talk about is Peggy Jones, also known as Lady Bo. I'm gonna put up pictures here of all of these women. So Peggy was a pioneer of rock and roll music. She played rhythm guitar for the Bo Diddley Band and was also married to Bo Diddley, hence her nickname Lady Bo. She was one of, if perhaps not the first, female rock guitarist. She's also referred to as Queen Mother Guitar, and her guitar playing was so amazing. She was such a talented guitarist, and in the 50s not a lot of women were in rock and roll bands, and most of the women that were either singers or background singers, and when she came out to be a guitarist, that was really something new. So the next wonderful woman I want to talk about is Veronica Ronnie Spectre of the Rounettes. You have probably heard of the Rounettes before because of their most successful hit, Be My Baby. So the members of the Rounettes were Ronnie Spectre, her sister Estelle Bennett, and their cousin Netta Talley. So the New York press soon started calling Ronnie the bad girl of rock and roll, and after leaving the Rounettes, she actually became quite successful as a solo singer, and her first single, Try Some Buy Some, was actually written by George Harrison of the Beatles. Moving on to one of my absolute favorite musicians of all time, Miss Janice Joplin. Probably everyone has heard of Janice Joplin before. She is so famous, but she was also one of the first women in rock music. She was one of the most popular musicians from the 60s San Francisco music scene, and she actually started off as a singer for the Big Brother and the Holding Company. After recording 2 albums with the band, she actually left them to start a solo career, and one of her most famous performances was at the iconic Woodstock Festival in 1969. If you have never seen videos of her perform, I highly recommend you to just type that into YouTube and watch these videos because she is such a unique artist. You really have to see those videos. So some of her most famous songs include Piece of My Heart, Me and Bobby McGee, Summertime, and my favorite song, Mercedes-Benz, which that is such a beautiful song. I put it on the playlist, listen to it, it is so amazing. She's also a member of the Club 27, which if you don't know what that is basically a group of musicians who died at age 27, and she accidentally overdosed off of heroin in 1970 when she was just 27 years old and kind of on the height of her career. She also never tried to be pretty or fit in or anything. I think she's gorgeous, but she wasn't really seen as beautiful back in the 60s. But she, her personality, her style, and pretty much everything about her played a huge part in hippie culture and in the whole Woodstock movement, and I feel like even nowadays, she's such an inspiration. She was also in relationships with men and women and very open about it. Moving on to another amazing artist who performed at Woodstock, which is Grace Slick. Grace Slick was a member of Jefferson Airplane. Moving on to another artist who performed at Woodstock, Grace Slick. Grace Slick is a singer, songwriter. She also played the piano in a band called Jefferson Airplane. And Jefferson Airplane was a very famous psychedelic rock band in the 60s and 70s. She actually started her career as a model in the early 60s and then soon started to get into music. She was part of a band called The Great Society from 1965 to 1966 and then left that band because she didn't like how unprofessional they were, and so she started to perform with Jefferson Airplane in 1966. She was also the one who introduced Jefferson Airplane more to a psychedelic sound, and she recorded songs like White Rabbit with them and also Somebody to Love. She's one of the most famous women in rock music, not only because she was the only woman in Jefferson Airplane, but also because she was one of the first women to be part in a globally successful rock band. My absolute favorite fact about Grace Slick is that in a TV interview in 1969, she actually said motherfucker. Actually, she was the first person ever to say that on TV, and I think it's just so rad that she just did it. Moving on with the famous Susie Quatro. Susie Quatro is a singer. She was part of a band called the Pleasure Seekers in the 60s and later released her self-titled debut album in 1973. So Susie Quatro also was one of the first women in rock music, and she actually gave an amazing interview in 2012 where she was asked about what it was like to be a woman rock star in the 60s and 70s, and I just want to read a part of the interview to you because I just think it captures the situation of female rock stars in the 60s and 70s perfectly. Before I did what I did, we didn't have a place in rock and roll. Not really. You had your Grace Slick and all that, but that's not what I did. I was the first to be taken seriously as a female rock and roll musician and singer. That hadn't been done before. I played the boys at their own game. For everybody that came afterward, it was a little bit easier, which is good. I'm proud of that. If I have a legacy, that's what it is. It's nothing I take lightly. It was gonna happen sooner or later. In 2014, I will have done my job 50 years. It was gonna be done by somebody, and I think it fell to me to do because I don't look at gender. I never have. It doesn't occur to me if a 6-foot-tall guy has pissed me off not to square up to him. That's just the way I am. If I wanted to play a bass solo, it never occurred to me that I couldn't. When I saw Elvis for the first time when I was 5, I decided I wanted to be him, and it didn't occur to me that he was a guy. That's why it had to fall to somebody like me. I think that's such a powerful statement, and I just really wanted to share it with you because I just love how empowering that is, to just be like, okay, I'm a female, so what? I'm gonna do it anyway. So yeah, that is very inspiring to me. Moving on with a band called Fanny. Fanny was founded by Jean and June Millington. Jean was a guitar player while her sister June played the bass, and they were making music together after coming to California in the early 60s. They were originally from the Philippines, and when they came to California, they just started making music together. They were known for not being the stereotypical girl band and not really living up to any expectations people had about women in the rock music industry. And they were a big inspiration for a lot of groups that would follow, such as the Go-Go's, the Bangles, and the Runaways. Moving on with another great woman, Patti Smith. She's a singer and songwriter and poet, and she mixed poetry with rock music. She was very influential on the New York punk rock movement in particular, and she released her debut album Horses in 1975. Her most famous hit is from 1978 and it's called Because the Night. You will find it on the playlist, but I think probably everyone has heard it by now. It's an amazing song. And in 2007 she was actually introduced into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Moving on with another very talented singer and songwriter, Miss Stevie Nicks of Fleetwood Mac. So Stevie Nicks joined Fleetwood Mac in 1975 with her then boyfriend Lindsey Buckingham. So the first album that they recorded with Fleetwood Fleetwood Mac was actually Fleetwood Mac's second album because they had done one prior to Lindsay and Stevie joining the band. But the album they did together was called Rumours, and it is up to this day one of the most selling albums of all time. She's also the singer on the song Streams, which is the only Fleetwood Mac hit to ever make it into the Billboard Top 100. While performing with Fleetwood Mac, she also started a very successful solo career with songs like Edge of 17. She's also part of the Rolling Stones magazine Top 100 Songwriters. That's a list that they released, and it just has so many amazing artists, and I think it's amazing that Stevie Nicks is on there too. Moving on with another amazing rock queen, Miss Debbie Harry. She's actually known for being the lead singer in a band called Blondie, and for years and years people thought Blondie was just her and that was actually her name, but Blondie was the band, she was Debbie Harry. She is Debbie Harry, she's still alive. So she found Blondie in 1974, and they actually released 3 albums after their first one came out in 1976, and then she released 3 more albums. And some of their biggest hits are Heart of Glass and Call Me, which I think everyone knows. These are such rad songs. Absolutely love them. They're amazing for like getting pumped to go to a party or something. Not that we're going to parties and concerts right now, but like if that is always on party playlists for me. She's one of the biggest punk rock icons. She always wore such daring clothes. She had bleach blonde hair. She was so beautiful and made such raw and amazing music, and people just really loved that. She was also friends with Andy Warhol, who did an amazing factory artwork of her, and then also a bunch of famous musicians, and she really was a role model for a lot of rock girl groups that came after her. Moving on with Ann and Nancy Wilson of a band called Heart. So Heart was actually founded in 1970 in Seattle, and by the mid-70s it was joined by Ann and Nancy. Their music was actually heavily influenced by folk music, heavy metal, and hard rock music. Ann Wilson was the lead vocalist, and she also played the flute, while her sister Nancy played the rhythm guitar and did some backing vocals. Some of their most famous hits include Barracuda, Crazy on You, and Magic Man. Moving on to the most popular 70s rock girl group, the Runaways. So the Runaways were formed in 1975 by drummer Sandy West and guitarist Joan Jett. Joan Jett also went on and became very famous in another band called Joan Jett and the Blackhearts. These two soon formed a trio with bass player and singer Mickey Steele. They also soon added Lita Ford as their lead guitarist, and then 15-year-old Sherry Curry as their lead singer. Later, Mickey Steele left the band and Jackie Fox joined it. So the Runaways were extremely young when they started their band. So they were all just 15 and 16 years old, touring the country, doing a lot of drugs, drinking a lot of alcohol, meeting a lot of new people. And all of that was so exhausting that just 2 years later, when she was 17, Sherry Curry left the band. Their debut album came out in 1967, and it was called The Runaways, and it was extremely successful. They were also one of the most successful bands in Japan at that time. So after Sherry Curry left the band, they kind of fell apart a couple years later, and Joan Jett started a new band called Joan Jett and the Blackhearts, and they had multiple hits, one of them being I Love Rock and Roll, which I think is their most successful hit. So I feel like the Runaways really paved the ground for so many female rock music acts that came after them. I know that Courtney Love of Hole, for example, always says that they were one of her biggest inspirations, and I think it is just so cool that there was this girl group, they were making raw rock music, and that is just so amazing. So I could talk about this topic forever, and I think it could go on and on because there are so many amazing female rock musicians who really need more acknowledgement. But I don't want this video to be like 2 hours long, so I'm gonna put in some honorable mentions now of women who are also super important for the rock music industry and who really deserve a lot of more acknowledgement than they have. The first one being Christine McVie, who is also part of Fleetwood Mac. She's a singer, a songwriter. Her biggest hit was Don't Stop, which she also released with Fleetwood Mac, and she's also part of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame because Fleetwood Mac is, and I think she's an amazing artist. Next up we have the Supremes. I kind of felt like they didn't really match the whole rock music part, but also the Supremes, an amazing girl group, very well known, great music. Next up is a band called Daughters of Eve, which you have maybe never heard before because they're from Chicago and they never really were that successful, but they were a female rock band in the 60s. And yeah, type them in on YouTube, check out their music because they didn't release a lot of music, but the songs that they released I think are pretty cool. The next amazing singer being Donna Jean, I hope I said that right, I'm sorry if I didn't. Basically, she was a singer with Grateful Dead. She released a lot of amazing albums and her voice really gave Grateful Dead their sound, and I think she needs a lot more acknowledgement for her work. Next up is Miss Marsha Hunt. We all know her, we all love her. She's an amazing muse, actress, and also singer, and I think she really was a big part of rock and roll movement. And the final one being Joni Mitchell. I didn't put her in the main category of the video because she isn't particularly a rock musician, but she was also very important for women in music in general, and I think her songs are amazing. I love her song River. I love a lot of her other songs, and basically she's just an amazing artist. So that's it for today's video. I know this is a bit of a different video than what I usually do, but I think it's important. It is Women's History Month, and it is important to learn about all of these amazing women, and I also think it's so interesting, and all these women need so much more acknowledgement than they get, and I just think it's important to share their stories. So if you enjoyed the video, I would love you to give it a thumbs up and share it with a friend. Share all of these amazing women and their stories with all the people that you know. Also, please leave a comment telling me who is your favorite female rock musician. Maybe I left some out, I probably did. Comment them below, we can talk about it. I would love to chat with you. If you're interested in 60s and 70s pop culture, fashion, music, makeup, hit the subscribe button. I make 3 videos a week all about these topics and I would love to have you around. I hope you're having an amazing day. Go out, enjoy the sunshine, take yourself some time to focus on you and your mental health today, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye guys!